the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast, and it is rainy a little bit outside and wet, but we're grateful for the rain because it's been a kind of a drier winter here. It's getting cold. It's still cold. It's like 36 degrees outside. So welcome to Friday. I wanted to let you know that I've decided with this show, our schedule is, we've kind of got a format now that I've met Jerome, Hebert, and I'm confident with him sharing the radio show with me. I'm changing up kind of the schedule. He'll take 2 days, I'll take 2 days, and we'll mix a day together. And we're going to, like today, we're going to use Friday. He's going to join me in a little while. And we're just going to talk about things that we've been talking about. And I think it's going to be add a better format to the show. So thank you for joining us. And I really do want to thank KEPW for playing our radio show in Eugene, Oregon, because that is very sweet to be driving down the road and hear my own radio show, to listen to Paula Brown, who was talking from homeopathy.org, or Erica Dugan, who was on Tuesday from Oklahoma talking about the abuse she's suffering at the hands of the current system that we have that must change. There was last night impassioned speeches about the budget. Has anybody read this bill? No, they never read the bills. That's what's wrong. Like, seriously. The Unpatriot Act was 1,500 pages, introduced on 9/11, passed on 9/15. You think they read that? No. The ACA, these big sweeping changes in our government, how they do things, swept in, pushed through by greedy politicians that are undermining how our society governs itself. And I guess, I actually, in my intro, say happiness is resistance. Well, I've used that for a long time because the whole system is oppressive, and they want us miserable. And, part of their contamination, for a second, I saw some wires hanging. I don't want to leave them like that. Part of their oppression is to keep us unhappy and sick. In the United States, at least, it's a complete win-win for them. They destroy our food supply. First they destroy the family, then the food supply, and then we have to pay them to go to the doctor. We have to buy insurance. When the insurance runs out, they tap the government, and the government is basically our tax dollars. So it's like They're not into curing people. They're into making people sick, which is, hello, nuclear pollution. I was listening to Jerome's show yesterday. We're going to talk about it when he comes back, but I was like, I was flabbergasted at that list that he read that did not have people's number one, on the top 10 at least, nuclear pollution. Are people not aware of what, it's not just, the poor water. How about the poor people? The people in St. Louis are sick, literally sick, dying, having children dying. Babies, 10, 11. People, I know someone who had problems all their lives, autoimmune deficiency, now has a brain tumor there. That is hard for me to take personally. And continue to just like, I couldn't believe nobody actually, nobody is actually concerned. I mean, enough to hit even the mark on the top 10 concerns of environmental causes. Like, really? No, nuclear contamination is one of the worst things that has ever happened on this planet. And in fact, I didn't actually mean to embarrass my guest last week, but, this past week when I asked Erica Dugan about her thyroid removal. She had thyroid removal, and several ladies that she knew in her area also had thyroid removal. And I suggested that it was from Fukushima. It all happened in 2014, 3 years after Fukushima. That seems very likely a response to Fukushima. But nobody even thinks about it. Like, we don't even go there. We do not even think about it. It didn't even make the top list that Jerome had. And especially like when we talk climate change, I mean, when we look at a map, it's kind of like what I did. It's logical, basic logic. When I overlaid the map of the nuclear power plants with the CDC's map of disabled children in the United States, it is a clear predictor of where the disabled children are is build a nuclear power plant. They know that for every 2 rads in the air, there will be 220, for a population of 1 million, 225,000 birth defects every year, and 32,000 extra cancers every year. That has been a known fact since the early 50s, late 40s. They started looking into like the major causes. Read Dr. John Goffman's books. Read his scientific works. You can get them. I mean, if you can't get them, contact me if you're interested, because I will share them with you, because honestly, I actually buy his books. I see him in the library, and I buy them to ship out to people. So I have a couple of his books that are technical that I look at. It looks like scientific gibberish, but somebody who understands it can digest it. I can read his summaries and understand it. So, but the bottom line is this. Nuclear pollution is one of the most toxic poisons on the planet. They have no answer for it. And it is made with all those other chemicals, the fracking chemicals that people are willing to talk about. They're not willing to talk about uranium and its byproducts, man-made human byproducts. So I really mean it when I say happiness is resistance. And part of that resistance is learning to understand ourselves and how to live better. And that's the thing. That health physicist from St. Louis convinced me. Well, call in.
I tried. It doesn't work.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Jerome just told me that he couldn't call in. So I must have something wrong with my Skype. So just to let you guys know, Jerome moved out here from Arizona, and he's staying in my extra room for about, 2 months or 3 months until he gets a place, gets his self stable. Like Finnegan came and stayed with me too, little baby wolf. So I guess this is sort of Lonnie's halfway house for anti-nukers. I don't know.
Yay.
Yeah. So let me go give Jerome a call. Hang on. I'm going to give him a call on Skype, and that way we'll have a strong audio setting. go. Hey, folks, trying to figure out the logistics. Jerome came out in the living room with his cell phone. I'm like, dude, that's not going to work. We're going to get so much feedback. So hold on. I'm giving Jerome a call because he came out and said, I can't call you. So there must be something wrong with Skype. Good morning, Jerome. So look, I was talking about your show yesterday when you read that list. I was flabbergasted that the nuclear waste was not on the top 10 or even in the discussion.
That's true.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that's why I'm really glad I have this venue, because this is the only place that people, activists, I mean, I guess I've become an activist in this. I'm just an outrageivist. I just am outraged. That's really what it is. I just cannot believe it. That people just so ignore it. St. Louis is worse than ever. The smell, it's not just nuclear pollution. It smells worse than rotten eggs around where these people live. They have to shut their windows all the time and use duct tape in their own homes. One house has over 300 counts per minute. Several of them have over 200 all the time. That's where they live.
That's lethal.
Yeah, and guess what? They're dying. Family members are dying of brain cancers at a young age. Children are dying at 10 and 11. Autoimmune deficiencies, learning disabilities. It's serious. This is not a not serious thing. And yet it hasn't even, and it's in the heart of the Missouri River right there. The Missouri River goes right down to the Mississippi. They had a flood recently. They're like, we hope that it doesn't get that nuclear waste mixed in with this. We're like, yeah, we hope so too.
That'll never happen, will it?
What?
That'll never happen. It'll never get mixed in.
It's already mixed in.
Government is watching it. Everything's going to be fine.
No, the government is not watching it, and that's the point. The government that we are paying our tax dollars to and entrusting ourselves. I mean, to be honest, I watched the C-SPAN. I watched Steny Hoyer. He was flipping mad. He is the congressional leader for the Democrats, and he was mad. This omnibus bill that they just passed to get us through to September, literally it was a foot high. He said they introduced it yesterday. He's like, how are we expected to read this? A foot high. And then 6 inches worth of documents that are just the amendments, the earmarks. And then there was another set of documents that was the actual, the legislation, the way the thing that was supposed to be written. So the whole thing, he's like, tell me you've read all of this. Tell me you've read this. No, you can't. And they passed it anyways. I mean, so it's like
what's in there, huh?
What?
Special requests from the oligarchs, no doubt.
No doubt. Money, money, money. It's a pork barrel. It's a whole pork barrel. That's the thing. I mean, our president is ripping us off blind. It's outrageous. We have to pay him. It costs us $1 million every time they travel. And he goes back and forth to Mar-a-Lago, and he sits with people, with CEOs. His son basically spilled some son-in-law private information to the Saudis, to the point where they're ridiculing him. And the Republicans say nothing. That's the ridiculousness of it. I mean, there are some honorable Republicans speaking out, to be honest. There are some of them. And yet there's this whole faction of people that believe it's all a conspiracy, that this is the Illuminati trying to get Donald Trump. Believe you me, I know that's a theory because I've watched the videos. People are like, really? They ignore his own personal behavior. That's the shocking part. I mean, he acts guilty in this whole investigation thing that's happening. If he were innocent, he wouldn't care less. He would stay disinterested.
Right. Yeah, and they sweep this stuff under the rug so much.
And not a word about St. Louis ever. this is the thing. It does make me so mad. I am still as outraged as I was 2 years ago when I heard about St. Louis. That was when we were talking about Flint, Michigan, and the poor children, the poor children. We're talking about not just an entire city. We're talking about a region. Because I know people who grew up on the other side of the river, and in fact, Larry Bergen, who's interviewed with me on this show, he's on Illinois, and then there's someone else on the other side of the river, Missouri. Both of them are sick from nuclear contamination, from having grown up in areas where they used to have it, but now it's gone. And
all of that waste was from the Manhattan Project, right?
It was that they buried 200,000 tons of the highest grade uranium after the Manhattan Project in St. Louis. And it was in there, it was out at a deserted area. But my thinking is I think they were thinking they could use it. They were planning on building nuclear plants out there because nuclear plants need a lot of water. So they were going to put it right on the Missouri. Well, not all those nuclear plants that they had planned in the 50s. You can look in John Goffman's book. I have an original one, and in the back he has this little thing as his nuclear plans for the future, and he lists they wanted to build 300 in our country. They were planning on putting them everywhere, and they're still planning on putting them everywhere. Just smaller ones. They built the SMRs. So Americans don't like big ones. Let's just put little tiny ones everywhere, and let the military put them up first, because that's what the military is now doing.
Yeah, and another thing that, as far as nuclear and proliferation and the people not knowing about it, is the military. I was thinking yesterday about all of the reactors and all of the submarines and ships, and probably they even have nuclear tanks at this point, all
of our nuclear weapons are on submarines.
Yeah.
And so, or most of them, let me just put them, almost all of them. And, but look what they're doing. When they threw our soldiers into Fukushima they knew it had severe, even if they didn't know it was a meltdown, they knew it was at levels high enough. They had them going out cleaning up Fukushima and and when they came back in, their clothes were so radioactive they put the clothes in a canister, in a special radioactive thing, and they're like, yeah, you're fine. Well, now they're refusing to. This is the thing that really upsets me the most about the nuclear industry, is just the denial. I mean, just admit what it does and let's figure it out, because you're still going to use it. Let's just be clear. They don't need to lie about it, because they've already hit us over the head with it. It's everywhere, and it is causing catastrophic harm. And guess what? They are not going to be accountable. This is really seriously the mentality of a child abuse survivor as an adult, because the adult perpetrators move on, amend their ways, and make a great life, and no accountability, no amends, no retribution, just like the nuclear industry. I mean, this is the gift of having been a child abuse survivor. I think maybe this is why this whole thing with the nuclear industry is just so unconscionable, because quite interestingly enough, on YouTube, as a matter of fact, there's this whole we got to stop the pedophilia thing, you know what I mean, with the child abuse.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the nuclear industry. We got to stop the nuclear industry. And they're both considered alternative. They're both considered wackadoodle. They're both considered why do you bother? You're not listening to science. Of course there's no pedophilia ring. Of course there's no child abuse in the world. It's
yeah. And there's no pedophilia anywhere.
Exactly. And the Illuminati is a figure of your imagination. Some crazy wacko.
And Joe Biden will make president.
Well, it's those dumb Democrats. They're dum-dums, man, the dumb Democrats. They keep putting in the oldsters. They need, all these guys, the oligarchs, they need new writers, man. Their stuff is getting old. I mean, that's the deal. And you know who's the new writer? It's going to be us. We're rewriting it, because we're taking it back. And I did want to share about this, because it is about helping your body heal, and there are things that people can do. And I encourage everyone to go to the library or go, look at books online and figure out things that work for your system. Refuse to participate in the industrial food machine system. You can, and even the medical thing, they'll slice and dice you to death. It's really ridiculous. Read the book Death by Medicine, and it is a shocking book. Over 900,000 people a year are killed by doctors.
Well, I know.
And it's sad because our doctors are not allowed to learn. The AMA represses our doctors and overworks them. The system, I know doctors who go to work and work 18 hours a day. I don't want to talk to a doctor who's working 18 hours a day. I mean, really. No thanks. If you're working 14, 16 hours and you're a doctor and you're listening to this all day long and having to make these decisions, what if I'm your 12th hour patient? I know I'm not getting the care I was at your number 6 hour.
Or 1.
Yeah, well, I don't mind people working 8 to 10 hours, 7 to 10 hours. A long hour should be 10 days. But this is part of this inhumanity and it's also, the doctors are not objecting about not finding out the information because they have been financially coerced and professionally coerced. It's not even just about the money. If they speak out and say, hey, I want to recommend Louise Hay's book, Heal Your Body, about the metaphysical causes for healing for people who don't seem to get well. You give them an affirmation to, you help them find what's wrong with them, and you can heal your body. Your body heals itself. And it is a true thing. I mean, I'm actually a product of self-healing. So I used to have very bad arthritis. And that's one of the things Dr. Bob Heron, I should have him back on. Dr. Bob Heron is the doctor who basically taught me how to heal and help my body heal when I was in my early 40s. And I think goodness gracious, I think he's 74 now, and he's running marathons. He's healthier now than when I knew him before. It's kind of interesting. So I think I'm going to have him back on, but I want to encourage people to empower yourself, to change your habits, because part of, many of you know I do tapping, right? And so I found a Brad Yates tapping video about allowing yourself to make better choices. And part of what he was discussing before we started the tapping session was that in order to have something different, you have to let go of what you've been doing. That's what Louise Hayes teaches in her book, You Can Heal Your Life. And she shares with us that a lot of the changes, when we make changes, sometimes our life hasn't caught up with us yet, so we're still getting some negative results. But you just have to keep on that positive path and be relentless towards self-care and self-love, and really learn to, you almost can't say, I love myself enough throughout the day. I know people laugh and scoff at that, but that is a very healing statement. I love, honor, and accept myself. These are really powerful statements, and they come to us at a deep level. And I am safe. That's another one. I am safe, because we live in a world we're being bombarded with, you're not safe. You're not, everything is scary. The air is going to kill you. The water's going to kill you. The food's going to kill you. Really? But we're living, and that's the thing. We are living.
Yes, we are.
So,
and I know since I've been in, I'm a living testament to the diet thing. Since I've been in Oregon, 2 weeks now, I've been eating basically identically to what you eat. The first day or so I didn't, but after that I did, and my health feels so much better. My digestive system feels so much healthier. My attitude is better. My brain thinks clearer. That's just the top of the list.
Yeah, I actually have to say, since I've cleaned up my diet 100%, I really am. I won't eat. I really will not eat. In fact, I won't eat. I'm practicing intermittent fasting, which is, 8 and 16. I eat all my food within 8 hours. And it actually helps your body. That's something that I learned recently. All of our organs digest at a different pace. So the full digestive cycle takes 12 hours. So if you go 12 hours without eating, you've digested your last meal fully. So that's why, that's in fact I went to see a kinesiologist here in town, and he suggested this a few months ago, and it's made a tremendous difference. It's actually really good, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, so these are the things, though. There's a really good book that I bought a few years ago that really did help me with many things. It's called The Healing Powers of Vinegar by Cal Orey, and I recommend this book. It has recipes, and it gives you things that you can do with vinegar that is very healthy for you. It explains why the Mediterranean diet people stay healthy on it. But simple little books like that, it's a used book. You could probably find it online for $2 or $3. The Healing Powers of Vinegar. There's other books about the healing remedies of vinegar, because vinegar is one of those remedies that have been with humanity for a long, long time, throughout humanity. It's one of, I guess what you call an original food, right? So it's kind of like fermentation. You know? Yeah,
exactly.
So Jerome, I have a question to ask you. Have you ever heard of flower therapy?
I have not, but I practice it regularly. I don't eat them, but I smell them, look at them, touch them, put them next to my face, and smoke them.
Well, flower therapy is about taking the essence of flowers, flower essence, right? And I'm going to read you the foreword to this book. It's called Flower Essence Repertory. And I really wanted to share this with people because, again, it's about finding alternatives and finding healing and allowing us to live a healthier life, even though we live in a toxic world. I mean, that's kind of our reality. That's what I think. This is why they get angry at us, because they don't want to talk about it. But the reality is we live in a toxic world.
Yes.
And so it's for us to be able, in order for us to live our fullest life, it's kind of imperative now that we get back to basics and really just clean up our diet. Refuse to eat the plastic food, because, man, all that food is seriously bad, that processed food. It's an anti-nutrient, and it causes disease. So I'm going to read this introduction, just a few sentences, so you'll get the gist of what this is about, because it's super awesome. It has been one of those therapies that Dr. Bob taught me about that I had no idea was even out there. Flower essences are a subtle liquid extract, generally taken in oral form, which are used to address profound issues of emotional well-being and soul development and mind-body health. While the use of flowers for healing has many ancient antecedents, the precise application of flower essence for specific emotions and attitudes was first developed by an English physician, Dr. Edward Bach, in the 1930s. Today, flower essences are gaining worldwide professional recognition for their significant contribution to holistic health and wellness programs. I'm going to read one more paragraph. It tells you exactly kind of what it is. Flower essences are generally prepared from sun infusion of either wildflowers or pristine garden blossoms in a bowl of water, which is further diluted and potentized and preserved with brandy. Quality preparation requires careful attention to the purity of the environment, the vibrancy and potency of the blossoms, celestial and meteorological conditions, and sensitive study of the physical and energetic properties of the plant through its cycle of growth. I can tell you that flower therapy for me seriously helped me. It is like the weirdest thing. This book is called Flower Essence Repertory, Repertory, Flower Essence Repertory. And it is kind of a guidebook because, like all these things that our doctors don't understand, you basically, and in fact, Dr. Bob explained that you can really only self-administer yourself. So you get this little guidebook and you look up, there's in the middle of the book, there's a little guide of what your imbalance is, right? So if you have challenges coming up, or you have children, or you want clarity, or you find you're codependent, or you have conflict constantly in your life, or parenting, or any kind of really resistance, responsibility, selfishness, sensitivity, transcendence, sexuality, surrender. There's a bunch of things that if you want to, like move through some emotions that are stuck in any of those words, they show you the flower. You go to the flower and it gives you like some ideas. And so this is the interesting thing. So let's just go to communication, since we're communicating right now, right? And these are the things that you can take. And it suggests certain flower therapies. And you'll know yourself, and then you can also get yourself body tested before you buy it. I think I've explained the body testing, but so let's say you're taking something as common as forget-me-nots. Forget-me-nots help you make connection with spiritual guides, remembering those who live beyond the physical realm. Or larch, blocked expression due to lack of self-confidence. So if you find you lack self-confidence and you can't speak up, you take larch. Maybe I took too much of that. Pink monkey flower. That's the name of a flower. And this is what it helps you. Fear of expressing real feelings. Fear of censor or judgment.
That's amazing.
I actually did take that at one point in my life, and it really does help you overcome those kinds of anxieties where you can't quite speak up for yourself and really say what your real feelings.
Right.
So, pink monkey flower. So this is how this works, and there's this is let's find another flower, violet, and this is all under communication. They give you must be 20 types of flowers here. So you will know which one of these resonates with you if that's your issue, right? As you read through this, and then you'll try it and you'll put the drop sublingually under your tongue. Now, this is not medical advice. This is what I've done, and I found it effective. So I'm just going to put a disclaimer here. I'm just suggesting that these kinds of things can, honestly, if you do it, I 100% believe it will improve your life. I think these things work. I've seen them really happen.
Well, Lonnie, I have to admit something.
Go ahead.
Before I was a lot more skeptical about the metaphysical. I was much more, if I don't see it, I don't believe it, that kind of thing. And doing some of these things that you have suggested has really opened my eyes to the fact that there is a deeper, hidden metaphysical energy in the universe that if we were to tap into, we could do very powerful things.
Well, in a way, we are tapping into it through the nuclear issue. That's why they don't want to give up the technology, even though it's killing people. See, that's the ironic part. We are tapping into the metaphysical. We're breaking up atoms. And the thing is, we're all connected on atoms. We're on a wavelength. We all at a, real seriously quantum level. Who is it Deepak Chopra has a really great book that explains at the quantum level how connected we are. Scientifically speaking, all the energy, we're all connected. So splitting these atoms is really linking into something powerful. That's what I think. But I think where we're missing the mark is refusing to admit the whole picture. It's harmful until we figure out something else with it. Like, there really ought to be a complete cessation of that type of dependence. And it's not just energy. I'm talking weaponry. I mean, and yet, because of its sheer power, the detonation power of it, the magnitude that it can kill so many. I mean, you know what? That
an atom.
In that, I don't know what. This last week, did you hear about that the that the power plants were hacked by the Russians? And they were able to do that because we have an old system, an old grid and all that stuff. It was pretty easy for them to get in and hack. They not only hacked the political system, but the power plants. So I thought about, when I heard that news, what if they decided to turn off Hanford or turn off, I don't know, a nuclear power facility and not let it, the generators would only work for so long. I mean, that would be really...
That is a gigantic thing. And honestly, Lonnie, I think that's what happened at Fukushima. And it may sound crazy, but
That makes, I can see that, Jerome.
They found evidence of Stuxnet, which is an Israeli virus, which is what they use.
Jules explained that. I heard a show with Jules on that.
Yeah, and the reason that they had such catastrophic meltdowns was because a valve closed, and it had to close through an electrical function. And then when the power went down, they couldn't reopen the valve, and the valve wasn't supposed to close, and they weren't sure why the valve closed, but it did close, and it was a tertiary cooling system, a spray-over system that was supposed to spray over, and it didn't activate, and that would have prevented the meltdowns. And it didn't activate because they didn't have power, and somehow it got locked out electrically. So it's because remember they were running around getting batteries and hooking up batteries. Well, they're trying to activate this switch to let this spray system get going again. You know, which could have only been shut off manually electrically. And there's no way that they would have shut it off manually electrically. So, yeah, that is a big thing. I honestly am very afraid of that. You know, if
you mean wait. The water system that should have come on that didn't come on could only be turned off manually, even if there was a big earthquake?
Yeah, somebody sent an electrical signal to the switch to shut it off. It's always on. You have to shut it off. And so that's why they couldn't activate the system, was because they didn't have, because it's all gravity fed too. So they could have prevented the meltdown.
Where did you read that?
Gosh, I don't know, Lonnie. I will investigate it more.
Okay.
And get information to you and to our listeners.
Well, so I want to talk about this idea too, Jerome, about I guess one of my primary goals is to get the conversation about nuclear waste, not just nuclear, because then they get into nuclear weapons and nuclear power plants, but if we stop the nuclear waste, I mean, the nuclear, you know, I got an email the other day from Donna Gilmore that said they're now saying, the NRC is now saying that they don't see how the ocean is going to corrode the tanks that are sitting next to the ocean. How the ocean, that they don't believe that they're going to be corroded. That the ocean will have no effect on the tanks that are sitting next to the Pacific Ocean.
Probably sea level rise wouldn't have any effect on them either, huh?
Probably
but there's
not.
going to be no sea level rise because global warming isn't real.
Yeah, because of the way they're contained, because they're in those containers, you know, they're in that, basically the tanks are in this concrete container, right, where it's like an over thing, and they have the things at the top. So they're saying that nothing will get in there to corrode the tanks because there's not very many, there's, you know, a few little slots, but the whole thing is not exposed to the weather. So they don't believe it's going to affect them.
And this solution for them, and keep in mind that every fuel bundle is going to end up in this little yard out there that was in that plant. And there's thousands of them. This is an endless solution because we don't have a long-term waste repository or even a mid-term waste repository. So it'll sit right there until we come up with a long-term waste repository. And even in the event, and here's where I have issues, even in the event we come up with a great long-term waste repository, very much of the waste that we produced is untouchable. We can't get at it. It's too deadly. It's just like Fukushima. You can't just go in there and start cleaning that up.
That's why they had to leave some in St. Louis for that same reason. That's exactly the proposed idea at the Westlake landfill. We'll take out as much as we possibly can, but the citizens are very upset. Some are very upset. They take all of it. And I don't think they grasp the idea that they just can't take all of it.
No. If you took a giant scoop, if you scooped the entire landfill 100 feet deep by a mile in every direction up and out, you would get most of it. But it still spreads out. That's the way radiation is. It's like grease, or it's like graphite. It gets on one thing, and then pretty soon it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
graphite on the ceiling. I had it on my toe. Well, that's graphite. Same thing with radiation, or grease, car grease. And you're working on the car, and 2 days later, you're finding grease in places that you didn't even think you touched.
So this is why I think that really, Erica Dugan said it best. Really, what we want is medical solutions. We want medical answers because this is now a medical issue. It's not. We need to stop. Like, the denial must end because people literally are being abused by their doctors because their doctors are not being allowed to treat them or say anything. Like, she lives right outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and her doctors, she's had some horrendous experiences with doctors refusing to send her prescriptions. They basically told her to go to another state, go to a neighboring state if she wants the treatment that she wants.
Well, check this out, Lonnie. According to a recent study, and this was in 2012, men in St. Louis County are significantly more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer than the rest of the state and the nation.
Of course.
A study completed by the University of New England finds the cancer's incident rate to be about 30% above Missouri's average and almost 20% higher than the national average. And the Department of Health spokesman, her response to that was she was troubled by it. So...
Well, they are troubled by it, but this is the sad part. Like, these people still have to live there. It is really an outrage. I mean, become friends with the people of the humans of Westlake and the Coldwater Creek, just the facts, please, Westlake landfill. I mean, there's basically two neighborhoods. It's not just one neighborhood. It's not the Westlake landfill. It's also the Coldwater Creek people. I mean, they're the first ones. The Coldwater Creek people are I think the topics in the First Secret City, which is there's First Secret City, the Safe Side of the Fence, the Atomic Bomb, the Atomic Cafe. I mean, these are documentaries made from different people who are in that community that are astounding, and talk to the people who have been suffering and subsequently became activists. I mean, like, Patty Amino became an activist. She was in the military. She spent her career in the military as an investigator for the military. She was a professional. And when she retired, in her early 40s, she had a medical accident, had to retire early. Her dad said, well, would you look into that plant that's been across the street from us for all of our lives? It turns out it had all kinds of high-level radioactive contamination. It was a secret thing for the World War II. And there were people across the street, and she said, we used to come home. I mean, this is a sneakily mean-hearted industry who refuses to talk about the harm they've caused and are still causing.
And they say murder is murder.
30% higher in St. Louis. The men get prostate cancer. 30% higher.
30% above the average for Missouri.
Wow.
20% higher than the national average. And this is in 2012. Okay, this was right after Fukushima.
I wonder if they've studied the children. I mean, this is what really got me motivated, was on the Westlake landfill. I had just heard about it, and there was a child who was, it brought me to tears. This little girl was sitting on a bed, and the back of her was this big, shining, bright light, like in back of her, like stars, And it was a photo of her sitting on a hospital bed behind the light, and it was just the light caught her just exactly. And it was a farewell letter from the child's mother on Facebook. Posted her picture, said, well, she was like 10 years old. I loved you, and I'm so sorry you had to leave us. And I'm like, oh, my God. I mean, this is the face of cancer. Little beautiful angels come into our lives, and then they're ripped away, and they're made to suffer the last few years of their lives because of the medical industry, again.
And check this out, what I just... this is from KMOX St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Colorectal cancer rates have been declining in people over 55. New research shows that rates have been rising among Generation X and millennials. A new study finds that Americans born in 1990 have double the risk of colon cancer and quadruple the risk of rectal cancer compared to those born in 1950.
Wow. Wow.
So I think if you want to find the damage from nuclear radiation, you
It's not hard. Yeah.
Need to look at the cancer rates,
And diabetes rates and schizophrenia rates. Dr. John Goffman said the first thing they observed when a person was exposed to nuclear contamination, low-level, constant nuclear contamination, was autoimmune deficiency diseases, which are rampant, and they don't really keep track of the numbers.
And the number one killer of Americans is heart disease. And
Exactly.
where does strontium go? Straight for the heart.
Exactly. And diabetes. We have a diabetes explosion.
Yeah, diabetes as well.
And schizophrenia. We have schizophrenia, too.
Well, I don't know how those numbers have changed.
Well, they probably only have gotten worse because the medical results were definitive. John Goffman has his books that, are out there. I mean, this is the thing. How can people who are talking about climate change and the earth, it's kind of sad because we have like the chemicals that are coming from the atmosphere for some reason. We're some big gigantic science experiment going on that we can't stop. I mean, this is the thing. This is why people, climate change feels like something you can do. Stand up for the water, stop the chemical pollution, because chemicals you can see, but people have been convinced that we have to have nuclear because we need the energy. That's the thing. This is the lie that they're telling us. It's like as if we really need nuclear because there are alternatives that are being killed. If we're talking about climate change and environmental collapse, we absolutely have to. We must include nuclear waste. Must.
Yes. It is. And I think that's why people just can't get up in arms over this whole nuclear issue. It's because the people understand that there's nothing that they can do about it, that the government is firmly in control. The government will not slow down or stop or even change their policies because of what the people say. And that has been demonstrated over and over and over again through the years. The only thing that would really work is kids protesting gun violence type 10, 100,000, 200, 300,000 people on the White House lawn. 500,000 people, people blockading the entrances to nuclear plants.
That's what they did. That's how they stopped the nuclear plants. Helen Caldicott, the Physicians for Social Responsibility, got 1 million people in the streets in New York City. I mean, this was a long time ago when she was a young woman. I mean, I remember hearing Helen Caldicott on. But this is my thing. I'm kind of annoyed by this because this is the part where people are getting the message. Your actions don't matter. That's why people refuse to get activated, because we can protest all we want, but they're going to continue. Like the military right now is planning on building SMRs on military bases. Period. They are going to do it because communities are rejecting them, and they need to have the nuclear waste for their military weapons.
Agreed. They need it for their military weapons, for their medical research. There's the nuclear.
The Mengele? You mean the Mengele research?
Well, the nuclear industry has insinuated itself into all of these other industries, and therefore made itself secure because it's what do you many people that I talk to are like, well, what about radiation for cancer treatment? What about radiation treatments for...
That stuff is the worst thing in the world. If you get cancer, don't take it. Most patients die.
What about smoke detectors? They use radioactive elements in them. What about all the things that radioactivity does for us? Imaging. What about seeing inside of things? Not people, but other things. We need radiation. We need radioactivity in our system to do all of these things. And indeed, I mean, without an X-ray, let's say you had pneumonia and they couldn't X-ray your lungs and tell you that you have pneumonia. They could just look at you and listen and go, well, I hope you get better. But with that X-ray, all of a sudden they can see, oh my God, like me with my back. Yeah, I got dosed with X-rays, but they're able to see, okay, he's got a T5 vertebrae that's broken. And using X-rays, get in there and fuse that bone back together, literally, so that it was as good as new. I'm not supporting, but I'm saying, do you see how they have integrated themselves into our society on so many different levels, all the way down to the safety of our homes, i.e. smoke detection, that people wouldn't even think twice about getting rid of it. They look at it as if this is a given. This is like the sun or the moon or the wind or the rain. It's a natural thing. That's the way people have been trained. We got to break. How do you break that?
The thing is, we live in a system. This is partly why Jerome people don't want to participate in this discussion, because really, you're right, it is everywhere. And I think that the calamity is that they have oppressed and suppressed alternatives. Like, we don't need this type of smoke detector in our home. I'm certain of it, with radioactive contamination. Considering all the digital technology, all the stuff that we have, there's laser technology that's not nuclear. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be done, sensors and things like that don't have nuclear in them. It is we radiate our food in the produce. That's kind of shocking. Everything in the grocery store goes through low-level radiation to kill the germs.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's what Heidi Lambert and we have this conversation. She's been on the radio talking about this. The reality is, it's everywhere. And so my thing is, it is everywhere, and we need. Okay, so let's just be honest about it. Let's say what it really is, and if as a culture they decide that it's worth the risk of children dying and people getting cancer, okay, but allow our doctors to treat people. Stop the medical denial, like those soldiers on the SS Reagan. That is a crime against humanity that our government is refusing to help those soldiers.
Yeah, and that they allowed that to happen to them in the first place.
Well, okay, I get it in the heat of the moment, whatever. These are soldiers, they give up their life in war. I get that. I mean, if these soldiers had been in Iraq and had their legs blown off, or had the very same been treated by nerve gas, say, or something like that, they would have not. The medical treatment, I would think, I'm not a member of the service, so I don't know how they actually work when you go to war. Maybe they don't help you. I don't know. But I would think that the United States military helps its soldiers when they are called to duty, no matter what. If you get sick while in service, you're going to get helped. And this whole idea that they can't get medical services, they're not going to get financial remuneration, their families are in disaster and ruin, they're losing their partner, their son, their father, their brother.
Their soldier. Our soldier, Lonnie.
Yes.
There you go. Why weren't they automatically wearing radiation suits? And why if they didn't have, because the reason was because we didn't have them, why didn't they have enough radiation suits for every single sailor on that boat, given that A, there's a giant nuclear reactor on the boat, and B, they're engaged in warfare activities which involve nuclear weapons, which are, radioactive. So why would you want everybody operating your equipment to be susceptible to that? Why wouldn't you have every single sailor on the boat wear a dosimeter, so that they could see right away, oh, God, I just got a dose, and get the hell out of there.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the soldiers they sent into Fukushima to clean up the decks, to clean up the city. I mean, these soldiers, it was worse than just being on that boat. And they are dying, and their children are having problems, and it's really, their wives are getting sick. And the denial. And now the judge here said that they have to sue TEPCO in Japan with the Japanese laws, as if they're going to get any help at all. And I hope Bonner said that he is going to he is going to appeal that. And hopefully he'll win the judgment, and they'll be able to have the United States government be held accountable, because that's really what it's about. It's not the Japanese government. It was their soldiers. And when you're on a military ship That's United States territory. And
Right.
when you're part of a soldier and you're out there, you're representing the United States. You're not just, oh, I'm going to come out here and help. They're 100% responsible for everything for them.
Yeah.
And yeah,
that is just one more tragedy, you know. So
well,
I don't know how you can make people angry about that. It's not a direct enough thing. I think what it is the government and the media have shortened our attention span while making all the material required to really understand things longer and longer. Like you were talking about that bill that came down today that's 12 inches tall, and we got to read it before tomorrow morning. Here, 4:30 in the afternoon, have reading tonight. You know, what 60-year-old congressperson is going to sit up all night and read that bill? They're going to read the summary and decide whether they can vote for it or not. And they've basically short-circuited our attention span. You know, I don't know how else to put it than that.
Yeah, you're right about that. And that is, but the thing is, it's up to us to save ourselves at this point. It's pretty obvious that there's no one going to save us. It's up to us. That's why I recommend people like looking at alternative ideas to like feel better and be well and stay off the pharmaceuticals, stay off the chemicals, stay off the plastics, because actually they're easy to take. It's easy to go to the 7-Eleven and get a cup of coffee and pour that like plastic into your cup to make it look milky, or some white sugar in there and make it taste sweet and knock it down. And then you don't even realize your internal organs are going into like shock and you're absorbing. If you drink that other stuff, it's plastic. So, I mean, these are small steps that each of us can take. And I just think we don't really have an option. Because as we improve and stay healthy in our lives, it's kind of like going to be the role model for people of how do you live in contaminated zone. You basically do it as, best you can. That's kind of, Heidi and I were talking about that. Like, you can't keep your family from, going to the coast. You can't keep your family from going outside all the time. It's unreasonable to expect your children never to go outside because it's contaminated out there. Like the people in St. Louis, their families go to parks. Now they know they don't go to the parks they used to. That's what the safe side of the fence was about. These people are at a park and they look over. There's a wired fence and there's people in hazmat suits. And honestly, that is the most shocking. People must see that documentary, The Safe Side of the Fence, and The First Secret City. I think they're both on Netflix and they're both on Amazon Prime. And they're really... it will tell you what the people in St. Louis have had to live with and are living with now. And while it's being cleaned up and it's being looked at, finally it's getting addressed by the government, they're still living with it. They haven't been moved out. They're still right there.
The entire city of St. Louis.
Hey, you know what, Jerome? We're at 8:58. We've got like 35 seconds left.
All right, Lonnie, I hope you have a good day. And everybody, I'll see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, and you know what? I think this is going to be a good idea where we're going to just share the Friday and have a conversation. I'm going to make an effort not to talk as much.
Okay. I love your fashion, honey, so that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you guys, put your courage feet on. Take some action. Really, seriously, it's up to us. We can be happy in this world, and I think our happiness will help find solutions. I'm sort of committed to that if I think our positive way out. So put your courage feet on, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.